past week, we sat in the text of John 11, verses 33 through 36. We didn't expand beyond the scope of those few verses because there is so much in that text that begins to reason away and move away from just being able to sit with the emotion of the text. I remember when I was a child, I was always asked, "Carl, do you know what the shortest Bible verse is?" And the answer was always John 11:35. Jesus wept. Jesus wept for the loss of his friend Lazarus. Jesus wept at the sight of tears streaming down his friends' faces. Jesus experienced the depth of loss and grief. Sometimes I have a hard time believing all the fantastical stuff in the Bible and in the stories of Jesus. Not that I do not believe that fantastical things happen. I have seen them happen throughout my life. Nor is it that I do not believe that Jesus did fantastical things, but rather those things, those parts of the story, they feel preloaded with what the author of those stories thought they actually meant. Especially when it comes to John's gospel. The author is always psychologizing everyone, telling the reader things beyond the events themselves. But I have never doubted the words Jesus wept as being honest, real, and true. Jesus wept, for me, is the crux of incarnation. The ability to celebrate and grieve that brings a person through the full range of what it means to be human. And these are just my thoughts. I'm not trying to say anything about the nature of the Bible or how you should read it or understand it. I am simply saying that for me, all the fantastical stuff isn't the reason why I believe or relate to the story of Jesus. It is the very human parts of the story, the moments of celebration and grieving, joy and pain, that convince me that Jesus is real. John 11:35 allows me to believe that John 3:16 is actually true, for God so loved the world. Without the witness to empathy, compassion, and heartbreak of Jesus, I don't think I would really believe it. I would really believe John 3:16. These past couple of years have been marked by loss for me. There are days that I don't remember all that has been lost, all the people who have passed away. Like I drive by Chilliwack and think I should call my uncle, somehow briefly forgetting that he is gone. Or when my diploma for my master's degree finally came, my first thought was to share it with my sister who passed away shortly after I officially graduated. It's like I oscillate between two realities, my very own multiverse. There is one reality where everyone I am grieving is still here with us, and one where they are not. In those moments, I relate to the Jesus who denied the reality that his friend was close to death and dismissed it. Not because he had some big cosmic plan or point to make, but because the weight of loss is too much to bear, and so he denied it. I relate to that Jesus. The Jesus that, when faced with the reality of loss, weeps, mourns, and grieves. There are many models of grief and ways that we can seek to understand grief. One model is the 6 stages of grief by Dr. David Kessler: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, and finding meaning. This is just one model, but a model that I have found helpful in my own journey through grief. Now, I'm not going to try to spiritualize this model or map it onto the life of Jesus or some other poor sap from the Bible, but rather, I want to look briefly at the stages in my own journey and ask the question, what gift was each of these stages offering me? How were they trying to help me? So the first stage, denial. I remember writing this song where the hook went something like this. I woke up feeling some type of way, feeling like I love myself today, feeling big, bold, and black. Yeah, I roll like that. Or something like that. Like, I can't remember exactly how the words went, but the first verse closed with the lines. Just got the word that my sister cancer free now, everything in the world the way it's supposed to be now. The problem was that my sister wasn't cancer free. She had finished her radiation treatments and called to tell me that the doctors told her that she was cancer free, which was a miracle. I was content to live in that reality, much like Jesus saying, "This sickness will not end in death." But my ability to deny was cut short when I spoke to the doctor on the phone about a month later, and he said that being cured was never an option, that the treatment was all about prolonging her life as long as they could. So, what gift did denial give me? It allowed me to have hope. It gave me space to listen to what was to come, but weigh it against the hope that I felt. In the second stage, anger. Anger, I think, brought me the gift of being able to speak honestly to myself, but also to speak honestly to those around me. My anger didn't look like rage. My anger didn't look like beating my fist against the wall. Instead, my anger looked like being able to face what was happening and speak honestly about it. And then the third stage, bargaining. I feel like I tend to be a realist. Like, I'm okay with dark emotions. I'm okay with things not going the way they're supposed to go. Let me rephrase that actually. I'm okay when things do not go the way they're supposed to go. So bargaining feels foreign to me. The idea that we can bargain our way out of something seems foreign to me. It has not been my experience that you can bargain your way out of anything. So this is the stage that I relate with the least because it's the one that feels the most hopeless. It feels almost nihilistic. It feels like the one that you can predictably see coming. But I know for some, like my sister, for example, bargaining was a massive part of their coming to terms with what was happening. So I can't offer a story, but I can empathize with those who find themselves in that bargaining place. I also realize that this may be the one that I'm the most blind to. So it may not be that I don't relate, but rather that I just don't see it. Stage 4, depression. I can try to grind my way through things. Depression, I think, offers me the gift of slowing down. I've wrestled with depression my entire life. From the earliest moments that I can remember, depression has probably been the thing that I can say I remember the most about my life. But there are different levels to depression. There are different ways that depression creeps up on you. And I know for a lot of people, depression becomes completely debilitating. And I know it's been debilitating for me in different parts of my life. And I look at it as an inconvenience, as something that is getting in the way of what I need to do. But this past year, as I walked with a counselor, he was the one that originally asked me the question, what gift could it be trying to offer you? And when we began to explore that question around the idea of depression, I realized that one of the things that depression offered me was the ability to slow down. When everything in my mind and my body wanted me to push forward and push through. So now, when I find myself in this place of depression, especially around the idea of grieving, I want to stop and ask myself, Do I need to slow down right now? And usually the answer is yes. And the thing I have the hardest time with is giving myself permission to actually stop. And depression comes along and says, I'm not going to give you a choice. You're going to slow down. And the fifth stage, acceptance. When my sister passed, one of the hardest things for me to wrap my head around was that there was so much I wanted to say to her before she passed. There were things that we needed to reconcile, but I wanted to give her the gift of knowing that regardless of it all, I loved her and forgave her and wanted nothing but the best for her. But unfortunately, there's all the things, all the junk that comes along. And before you know it, all the things you wanted to say are held up by other things that you couldn't say or didn't know how to say. And I regretted this. I still regret this. But I came to this place where I know I can't say these things to her, but I can accept that. So the gift that acceptance brings is the ability to be present to the moment for whatever it is, for whatever is happening now versus what we wish had happened or could happen. Acceptance allows us to say, I wish I could have done that, but this is my reality. And the sixth stage, finding meaning. Finding meaning is one of the hardest ones to actually name for ourselves because often we mistake finding meaning for platitudes and axioms that aren't actually very helpful. Like one day in heaven, we will know why God took her. It's not helpful. It doesn't help us find or create meaning from the grief that we are feeling. It bypasses it, actually. With that said, finding meaning is a very subjective thing, though. What is meaningful to one person isn't necessarily meaningful for somebody else. And so I never want to dismiss or make light of the ways that somebody has found meaning in their grief. I have more to say about finding meaning, but to be honest, it's a little too close for me right now. So I'm not going to share stories about finding meaning in this moment. I know I could go on and talk about other events in my life where I have walked through the process of grief, but the reality is that in this moment, the one that is in front and center in my mind is the loss of my sister. And while I'm finding meaning in it all, it's not something I can share publicly at this time. As I said, it's all just a little too close. But the gift that finding meaning offers is a way forward. It allows us to move from this event into the future. And so just in closing, I get that the message today probably wasn't the most coherent at times, maybe even a little bit disjointed, but that's okay. I tried to be as forthright, honest, and real with you as I could. And the disconnect between the verses about Jesus's tears and my own tears only seem distant in this message, maybe. Because in reality, I feel that Jesus is weeping with me, and that these verses tell me that that is the reality. That Jesus weeps with those who weep, that Jesus weeps with me.